Right. Well, thank you. I will start. Thank you very much, Howard. Thank you very much to the Society for allowing me to take this month. Came up because we were looking at the speaker series, and Howard and I were in conversation about what a speaker is. And I'm very interested in what every voice has to say. And so we dreamed up this idea of having a round table of sorts. The idea of a round table can be, I mean, you can get a physical round table in your mind. And I find that when you're sitting around a round table, actually, there is more conversation flowing than if you're sitting at a square table. So imagine you're in the round, even though we're in rectangular boxes, if you could, just to start. And when I was working with the International Society for the System Sciences, I worked with Sue Gabriel, since past, but she was a passionate believer in the round table as she defined it, which was a little bit more structured and formal than I wish for today. And she had a very uh, she had a pro forma and a structure and a routine and a regular way of doing it. And she would make the announcement. They would have a theme, and everybody got 2 minutes, and you would go round and you go round and you go round. I'm going to do something slightly modified today, and I'm hoping that we can do that in some more informal way, but nevertheless in some structured way, so that we get the opportunity to share what cybernetics means to me, to you, in 2026. And so what I propose is that how many people have we got here on the participants list? We've got 16. So if we do perhaps 2 rounds of 2 minutes, if everybody would wish to speak, that will be at least an hour. What is that? That would be an hour if everybody spoke. And then perhaps we could have 30 minutes of some more informal conversational in the normal kind of Q&A or speak as you will after that. And I propose instead of me calling on names, you just put your flag up, as it were, put your hand up with the electronic reaction, and then I can call you, and that would be a way of ordering this rather than me calling on people. And if you do not wish to speak, that's perfectly fine as well. So, in this way of doing it, which is a bit of an experiment, don't put your hand up. And the other thing is that we are recording this, and I don't want you to feel restricted by that recording. If you wish to not have your responses in the public video that will go on YouTube, let me know, and I will edit this video so that that is not included. And that's all perfectly fine. And I just want to honor this group for this moment. I've run a number of meetings like this in person and online in the past. Open Space by Harrison Owen was one stimulus to this concept of those who show up are the right people that are here. And the law of 2 feet, if you don't like what's going on, you can walk away. And I suppose that's the same here. You're quite, don't feel obliged if you need to leave. So with that, I'm not going to start by what I believe is cybernetics is important in 2026 for me. I do have some ideas, obviously, but I thought we might throw that to the group and see if that if this approach will work. Anybody got any questions before we sort of start going around the room, as it were? Was that, if I made myself clear, Howard? Is that right?
Will you stop us after 2 minutes?
Yes, I will, because I'm going to. There is actually a facility on Zoom. I haven't tested it, but there is an app. But the other thing I've found is that perhaps I will just use my timer
No.
to do 2 minutes, and then I can gently suggest that you stop. I know when Sue was doing it, it's when the 2 minute came, you had to stop exactly where you were. And I think what I'll do is I'll just say 2 minutes and I'll allow you to finish the sentence, but don't make that into a paragraph. If that's, I think that's the more gentle way to handle this, if I might. So I will time 2 minutes from when you start, and that will give us an equal chance to go around twice, I think. in the time allocated, and then we'll see where we are. Does that make sense?
Right. Thanks.
Okay. Well, is anybody willing to begin on this topic of what does cybernetics mean to you, or say it to me, in 2026? Anybody? Well, there you go. Sean Mannion. Good for you.
I'll break the ice.
2 minutes. Go.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm a very new member of ASC. Just joined about a week ago. I'm in Pittsburgh, where I have the pleasure to have met Paul and talked to him and learned from his wisdom a couple of times. Always insightful. I'm about 5 years into my investigation, study, understanding of cybernetics, so relatively new, probably compared to most people here. Neuroscientist by training, bounced through government and tech, and now at Duquesne University, teaching in the the psychology department, which has a phenomenological base for those who don't know. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. What cybernetics means to me now, and sort of my main focus, I have a broad interest in it. I've gotten a grant to do some studies of the phenomenological roots of cybernetics, Norbert Wiener's time under Edmund Husserl, some of McCullough's early influences in the 1930s. And I think that phenomenological foundation may help make it relevant to a broader audience, cybernetics, to a broader audience. I think the interdisciplinarity of cybernetics in both its history and its current practice is something missing from a lot of our applied technology, and finding a more purposeful and human-centered approach to technology that cybernetics can help enhance from what we have now with that phenomenological basis is something that interests me, as well as its impact on our understanding of consciousness. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Is that Jude? Is that a wave?
She was
No,
snapping.
that was a welcome.
Oh, okay. Any other hands coming up here? I don't see any hands. Oh, there's a hand. Howard has a hand up. So let me start the clock. Okay. Timers. Hold on.
Thanks for hosting this session, Peter. This is great to have this opportunity. I've been interested in this quote that I came across recently in the book Traditions of Systems Theory. I just put it in the chat there. It's kind of an outsider looking at what happened in the field, we might say, of cyber systemics more broadly, and coming up with these two gestures: the gesture toward the living and the gesture toward the designed. And this is structured my thought a little bit, and I tend to think about the living and think of design in terms of institutional design, in which technology is but one factor. And I've started to wonder about that recently with the recent developments in technology, and so I've kind of turned to people who have more explicitly focused on technology, and I wonder about their determinism, their technological determinism. I tend to think of macro historical trajectories in terms of contingencies and creativities, and so I wonder why would any scholar in contemporary times, when all the determinisms of the past seem lost and obsolete, turn to a form of determinism? And so I've been looking at Bernard Stiegler and his students Yuck Hui and David Bates, and also Kevin Kelly and Benjamin Bratton and Blaise Aguirre-Iarcas, and looking at what's their argument for technological determinism. And they're not saying the same thing. They're saying different things. And so I've been
2 minutes.
I've been thinking about teasing that out.
Thank you, Howard. Yeah. And who's going to go next? Anyone else willing to share their 2 minutes of thoughts here?
Okay, I can try.
Please.
I'm Johannes, a social worker and teacher for social work from Germany, and maybe I'm wrong here. I want to first say um, I'm interested in cybernetics of second order cybernetics, or for me, it's similar to constructivism. And as a social worker and as a teacher, the greatest benefit for me is the insight that it makes little sense to believe in true or in truth or in false things. So no. It's sometimes useful to remind myself that it's only me who is the observer, and other observers will have different perspectives. And I'm very stuck by the saying of Heinz von Förster and Ernst von Glasersfeld: objectivity is a subject's deception that it could observe without itself, or as a disillusion. And I have three statements from I derive from that, or other people derive from it. It could be different, and people always have good reasons for what they are doing. They have, from their perspective, good reasons. So even I don't agree with them, or I can't understand in the first run. And I have also a saying, there are always at least seven possibilities, and this is enabled by this perspective. And if I have some seconds left, so it's also the saying of Heinz von Förster is very important for me. I'm a part of the world, and everything I'm doing, it changes the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't know who's got control of the screen, but could you make it so the speaker is on the screen? I'm looking at myself, and I realize that I don't know if if you're looking at me while the person's speaking, and if that is the case, I apologize. Thank you, Howard. If you can just do it so whoever's speaking, that would be delightful. If you
Peter,
could.
sorry for the interruption, but
Yes.
people can also choose multi-speaker as a feature if they have a recent version of Zoom, which will put forth the person who is speaking lately, although we can also try to rotate the spotlight for the individual who's speaking as best we can.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Let's move along to whoever wishes to speak next. You're all doing very well on the 2 minutes so far. So Mark would like to speak for 2 minutes. Mark.
Okay. So there are many aspects of second order cybernetics that interest me, particularly across the sciences, technology, environmental studies, and the arts. But lately, I've sort of honed in on the somewhat older fashioned notion of steering and steersmanship, which I've found a little bit too mechanistic. So I've tended to gravitate towards conceptual frameworks derived from that are more fluid and maybe amenable to conceptual approaches. And that includes terms like providing an orientation or guidance systems, or even systems of moving and diffusing. And what interests me about those is how to create architectures and strategies and processes that enable those kinds of things, meaning that provide orientation or that can guide the development or evolution of a system or interdisciplinary systems that could initiate and direct movement. That's it.
It's pretty good. Thank you. That was just 1 minute 15. All right. Who's going on next? Please. Any willing?
I'll go.
Paul go. Paul's going. Okay.
So I feel strongly that unlike claims of general systems theory and systems thinking and so on, that because cybernetics is about purpose, and because we seek purpose or to explain purpose in the things that we observe, therefore, per Heinz, we're also responsible for our purpose and our explanations. And this, of course, you will all recognize as the responsibility and the ethical consequence of second order. And I find that when asking students to consider how they will approach the wicked challenges that they are very often obsessed by and upset by, that this is foundational and transformational for them. And I, of course, teach mapping and systems thinking and causal loop diagrams and other ways of trying to explain what they see, but never from the point of view of describing the world as it is. And again, this is also transformational because it leads to the necessity of encompassing other points of view in the conversations they convene or join in order to design for these unpredictable and unknowable conditions of the world that we often call wicked challenges or wicked problems. I find that irreplaceable. I don't know of a better way of talking about it. And there's a movement, of course, many movements, complexity theory, again, general systems theory, and so on, but I don't find them adequate compared to second order. So this is what I would say.
Thank you. Okay, Jerry's got his hand up next. Jerry.
Thank you. I want to follow Paul's comments because what I'm doing and have been doing for the past half century is closely related to the notion of purpose of cybernetics. And more specifically, I've been concerned about the specificity of cybernetics for human health and its meanings for public policy. And I've centered that around basically the mathematical calculations of dose-response relationships, that is, the relationships of the external world to the internal world, and the changes that they cause within the internal world, or the mental world, or, if you would, the cognitive world. Now, the basic observations that I've made over the years is one that classical mathematics is inadequate to describe chemical mathematics or in general biological mathematics. And so that in this context, I feel that second order cybernetics lacks the mathematics to be reflexive with respect to human health or with public policies of human health. So I'm taking a highly specific move towards specifying in both a particularly a logical sense, particularly a predicate logic sense, of the notions of steering now from the internal view of the genetic system, steering itself towards either good health or not so good health, depending on situations. And so in this context, I am very interested in further developing the network theory in terms of its mathematical foundations in the chemical sciences. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let me just get this clock sorted. Okay, Jason has his hand up. Jason.
Okay, coming.
Coming. All right. Jason
You
has
heard me?
slides.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just make sure I'm not sure.
Go.
I'm not muted. Well, to answer the key question, what does cybernetics mean in 26? I determined that I need to speak after Paul because Paul once told me, what is cybernetics? Cybernetics is to freeze dead people. So in a classroom. So my perception is the old cybernetics in a version of the Nobel winner, Ashby, Heinz, von Foster, Maturana, etc. Not dead, but entered into a museum. So cybernetics went into the museum. But the new cybernetics is born right now in this year in the context of this AI way. So what does that mean? I'm showing you a recent, a few days ago, this Twitter post emerged. It reviewed the earliest concept. The title is Harness Engineering in Cybernetics. This is in the context of current prompt engineering. And how do you manipulate the agents, an AI agent, to make your work more productive? So you all see this picture is reviewed, but the interesting table is here. Here, the author listed the three diagrams. One is about manufacturing in 1780s. And the second is about the infrastructure in 2010. Internet infrastructure, data structure. And now, what he listed here is code base 2025. It's last year.
That's your 2 minutes, Jason. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm done. So this picture is, I would like to bring you attention. And also, I have what I want to say is cybernetics is shrinked into part of SCI, systemics, cybernetics, and informatics unify as a trinity field that my student group is working on to redefine.
Thank you, Jason.
So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Please, thank you. Who's going to put their hand up?
I'll go.
Okay, you go.
I'm Jude Lombardi, and I'm wondering where the women are and people of color, which is a problem as far as a wicked one, no doubt. I see cybernetics as a transdisciplinary languaging for thinking and performing alternatives to the beliefs that are literally killing us. My background is also in a social work, and I don't know if you're familiar with, but Sophie Freud wrote an article called Cybernetic Epistemology and the Paradigms of Clinical Social Work for my fellow social worker in the room. So I'm very interested in how cybernetics, after 30 plus years of being in the realm of cybernetics from my experience in the American Society for Cybernetics, is to focus more on the contemporaries in the sense of those that came after the 70s, not to dismiss the others, but that first generation of second cybernetics, and then now the contemporaries often of mine, the second generation of second cybernetics. So this is, and how might those understandings influence, orient the social transformation necessary, and it's going to be even more necessary once our current disorder situations that are generating throughout the world, starting often here in the United States, can be how we can rebuild. So that's my focus and my desire in cybernetics.
Thank you, Jude. Who's next? Well, maybe I'll go next then, following Jude. The question was, what's it mean to me? And so I have spent a number of years in this cybernetic world and also in the world of cybernetics. And I was introduced to cybernetics specifically by Bill Reckmeyer in the 1980s, but that was after learning about systems in the 1970s. And what it means to me now is a way to understand human dignity, a way to understand freedom, a way to understand control and communication at its essence. And by being with my friends and colleagues here in the American Society for Cybernetics, and now I'm engaged with the British society, cybernetic society, I'm finding it's a great way to have fun. We have the Ministry of Fun. It's a great way to be in community, and it's a great way to enable creativity, which is at the essence of, I think, being a human, is creativity. And with examples like Gordon Pask, who was all about fun, but serious fun, I think we can learn a lot from that. And I've been very energized, the fear of pixels and AI notwithstanding, by engaging with various AI programs to learn the impact it's having, both good, bad, and possibly fatal, on our society, and seeking ways that cybernetics can make a contribution, as Jude just said, and Paul, about what's our purpose in life and how do we deal with the accelerating changes that are upon us. And I think cybernetics is crucial in that regard. And that's what it means to me at the moment. And I'm delighted to hear all of your views on this. So that's my 2 minutes. Anyway, so who's going to go next?
Peter, I'd like to follow you because I'm a
Okay,
member of the
please.
Ministry of Fun.
Oh, right.
And it's such a pleasure to learn from you and some of the rest of you that I know and learn from, like Paul and Howard here and Jude. My name's Jocelyn Chapman. I teach transformative leadership at the California Institute of Integral Studies. And cybernetics has really influenced how I teach. It influenced my teaching when I taught remedial math to adults. I think part of the influence is on focusing on each learner's learning, but me, myself as a learner. So I think the cybernetics concept of feedback and circularity has been one of my favorite learning concepts, so that every effort I make is my input, and how that turns out as output that informs my next input is really a big deal. But I'm not thinking of feedback as me telling students how to learn better, but me learning how to teach better. So it's concepts like these that really influence not just my teaching, but my living. And I think of cybernetics that way, is always asking me, how do I want to construct my reality? What am I steering towards? Is that really where I want to go, and what I want to do and who I want to be? So it helps surface the bigger questions for me. And I like this community a lot because where the bigger conversations tend to go for me is always ultimately towards love. And some of the individuals, like Howard here nodding his head, those are the places I cherish the most that we get to in these conversations. And so this particular format is a little awkward because I keep wanting to jump in and engage. Johannes is talking about constructivism. Yeah, that's really important to me as well. And I'd love to hear more. I barely got to hear where Jerry was going with his 2 minutes, but I was intrigued. So I like this. It's tasty, but yeah, I'm anxious to hear more and go further with this. Thank you so much, Peter, for having this event.
Well, thank you, Jocelyn. That was 2 minutes. That was great. So now, who is up for 2 minutes? Who haven't we? I don't wish to put anybody, but Larry has put his hand up. Okay, Larry, you're on.
Thanks. I'm Larry Richards. I've been in one way or another with the American Society for Cybernetics since 1977. The question, what does cybernetics mean to you right now in 2026? My response is, right now, it is a counter to the hype associated with what we call artificial intelligence, and the path that's taken us down, and reinforcing a particular way of thinking that is more competitive than cooperative, more malicious than careful, and more towards seeing the world as a game with winners and losers, rather than humanity as a is something worth preserving.
Thank you, Larry. James, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. I'm primarily a general systems person with side interest in cybernetics, but I just want to make some comments and observations following up on what Paul had mentioned about purpose being very similar to cybernetics. Cybernetics was born as a child of war, World War II, where management and coordination of many different fields was a primary concern, coordinating the effort to win over the Nazi effort over in Europe. So that became and steersmanship was the seminal label, and that became a very important part of the dynamics. I'm concerned that there are also non-volitional, non-intentional aspects to it, which are autonomic within systems, and there's a plurality of systems interactions which are not easily evaluated in terms of simple models, but a plurality of coordinations, which are a major challenge to integrate together and to analyze, and then come up with some productivity in different fields and different applications. So it's a major concern where the shift has gone from, I know it's terms of a first order and second order cybernetics, but it has this greater practicality of how there's a multiplicity of these factors that are involved. Just want to bring that to everyone's attention.
Thank you, Jamie. That's good. That's a minute and a half. Oh, good. Okay. Who'd like to share 2 minutes? Okay. How are we on time?
I think I'm ready.
You're ready, Michael.
So,
Okay, Michael. Welcome.
I tried to figure out where. Thank you, Peter, for organizing this. For me, cybernetics is where different disciplines come together. And so in one sense, the first order cybernetics is trying to control systems. Second order cybernetics is about, for me personally, about conversations, about meeting people from other disciplines. It's where ethics and modesty or humility are coming in. And it's, for me, it's deeply associated with learning. And in my profession or vocation, you could say, is where design and cybernetics and teaching are coming together. I'm teaching design theory. And I always have the feeling I'm learning more from my students than the students are learning from me. Hopefully it's not that way, but often it's really precious what I'm taking out of our conversations, our discussions, and sharing our ideas. Feedback is totally essential. And I wrote about that a couple of years ago, a paper about how we are using feedback at the end from the students at the end of every session to inform and learn. And we are kind of a learning system. And next week will be different depending on the feedback from this week and so on. And so but everything is a process. We are learning all the time. There are no errors. We are just a learning system, we all together. And here we are.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. I think good. I'll stop the clock there. That was just under 2 minutes. Do that. Mixel, is that, or Michael, or please?
Yeah, you can call me Michael if you want. It's Mixel.
Mixel,
it's a digitalized Michael. And
okay.
That's because of my cybernetics on evolutionary cybernetics, which is a Brussels tradition, I guess. I didn't hear the concept fall yet. And I got more questions than I got answers. But I wonder if I'm looking at it from an evolutionary cybernetic perspective, how the geopolitical effects of the multipolar world are happening at the moment. And I've been focused on digital transition for 10 years. I've been focused now on energy transition for the past 5 years. But I think there is this global learning systems happening, and I think that's what's going to happen in the coming years. Yep, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Excellent. I cancel that. So let's see. Kyle, good morning.
Good morning. So I come to this from a little bit of a different position. I'm brand new here. I have been introduced to cybernetics through a sort of post-formal avenue of working in large organizations as a design strategist. I consider myself a transcontextual designer or a socio-technical designer. I sort of felt around in this space for about 10 years before tripping over Gregory Bateson's work. And so it was sort of intuitive. And that's the thing I'm noticing most is right now in the organizations I'm working in, there's an incredible stress and lostness that comes from our traditional tools and methodologies not supporting decision making today, not supporting work and organizations today. And so my work has been in building new frameworks that steer more into anthropocomplexity and narrative rather than linear process and sort of Christmas list requirement gathering in the way that we build things. And so the primary thing I'm noticing is without a new set of tools, without new options, I'm seeing people are hitting walls, and there's a demand, there's a real desire to introduce something new. I'm also finding that many people are talking about this in the way that I was 15 years ago, where it was not grounded in the theory or discipline, but they're sensitive to it. And so we're speaking this in a number of languages. I'm curious how we start to connect those languages and discover how we're all moving through it at the moment. That's me.
Thank you, Carl. Okay. All right, where are we? Carl's had his hand up.
Can I say something? Deborah Forster.
Please, go.
I'm a cognitive scientist by training, and I worked with studying non-human primates. And I was introduced to cybernetics in the 90s, and I dissed it because the way I was introduced to it meant that the system had a purpose. And I was trying to study systems to even see how things like purpose emerge. So I wanted something that did not have to depend on purpose in order to define a system. And all the things that I went through, I'm now working in a much more value-driven transdisciplinary research and innovation sensibility, the future of physical work. And so now the idea of having a purpose has a very different role in how we think about organizing work and how getting people involved. So I have a renewed interest in how to play with that.
Thank you. Okay.
Peter, I'll go next.
Oh, thank you. Oliver. Olivia,
yeah.
Sorry. How am I pronounce your name? Sorry.
Oliver Works. I'm new to cybernetics as well. Found it in 2024. And for me, cybernetics offers the most rigorous and fun and deep way to think in enlivening ways that translate then into my life in ways that are really joyful and connective and loving and interesting and surprising. And as I am steeped in a culture in Oakland, California, of machines and sort of different epistemologies that are fall a little bit more flat for me, I find that aliveness that cybernetics can map so well generates a lot of excitement and a lot of viability in all my projects and all my efforts and all my relationships. And that there's as Kyle was saying, a hunger for that. And I'm looking forward to engaging with that more and more in an effort to create more viable futures. And I'm going to end with, if I have time, I think a poem from one of my favorite cyberneticians, Kathleen Forsyth. And it goes like this. A Philosophy of Words is the title. To tell you of my inside and bring it out for your experience, or to show how the world has entered me, either inside out or outside in, the words alone are used. Don't ask the poet what he means. Ask him how he used the words.
Thank you. Okay. Who's going to go next? And when we are done, we can see what we're going to do when we're done. Anybody else wish to share 2 minutes of what cybernetics means to them? Adler is put his hand up. Adler.
So this year, cybernetics, means I'm very hopeful, and there is a few things. One is the conference in Brazil that the IAC is bringing the annual conference to Brazil, and I think this expands in terms of generations, geographies, but also in themes and different disciplines. So I'm very hopeful that this year there's a new, fresh ideas and fresh group of people. And the other part that I wish to see more is to look at. Today we can collect so much feedback, and I wonder how much awareness is there? How aware are we about all this feedback that we're getting? Just to give an example, I sometimes feel that, especially in companies, the feedback is in terms of more profit, less in value, and much less in externalities. Just to give an example, and I wish the cybernetics sort of becomes more used and adopted to be more purposeful, but also more ethical in the sense that we look more broadly in terms of the feedback that we can use to design better systems, but also to better societies. And ending with the word I like very much, collaboration. So that's my hope for this year for cybernetics.
Thank you, Adler. Council. Okay, how are we doing on this go around? Any other contributions to the 2-minute round? Matthias. Thank you.
Yes. My first encounters with cybernetics were 15 years ago, and I was searching for something that I could apply to my investigation at the time that were developing interactive systems. And after participating in the 2014 conference, Living in Cybernetics, this view really expanded to a way of really seeing the world and engaging differently with others in a more expanded and generous way. The idea of listening and understanding that we cannot transmit knowledge became very strong. And this changed the way of acting and engaging with my students, with my family. So it really changed the way from applying knowledge to the idea of living cybernetically. And this year, I would hope that we could understand this new way of engaging as a way for social change. I think we are desperately needing social change. And I do think that cybernetics offer a way.
Thank you. Sergio.
All right. Thank you. All right. So, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
So my camera is not working, but for me, cybernetics is the science of information and feedbacks. So basically, and the purpose, as somebody said. So how to understand systems by using feedbacks or circularity between input and output that transmit some information that in some sense is only syntactic and non-semantic to steer systems is something that interests me in comparison with what's going on with living systems, which not necessarily are reactive feedback systems, but anticipative systems. And so the difference between both theoretical frameworks, one that it is cybernetic based on feedbacks, and the other which is based on organizational closure and anticipation, is what interests me from cybernetics.
Thank you. Okay, how are we doing here on any other hands or comments? I can see that we've been going for 50 minutes here, and I think we're going to go for 90 minutes. We could go around again if nobody else is in the list. I see we've grown to 23, so that's a good number. Okay, let's do one other round, and then when we're finished on the rounds of 2 minutes, we can have a more free-flowing question and answer, and we can pick
Peter,
up on...
excuse me, Jocelyn.
Yes.
Jocelyn had her hand up for a moment.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Oh, I noticed in the chat, Larry mentioned it would be interesting to unpack purpose. I think it would be too. I wonder if we might switch to people who want to share their understanding of purpose.
I'm open to what a lovely idea, and let's finish our 2-minute rounds then, and on what cybernetics means to me, and let's emerge into an understanding of purpose. I'm happy to do that. If we went around again, I was going to mention, and I just going to take this opportunity to acknowledge Jocelyn and her provocation to me many years ago to write about my love for cybernetics. And so I just want to amplify that because I had to dig deeply about that. And it's just this idea of love in this tumultuous world is very important. So that's sort of a bit of a digression. Anyway, I'm all for that, and in that regard, I think we perhaps should be free flowing now for the next half an hour till 1:30, when we'll wrap it up. Larry, you raised this, and I think we're now shifting to understanding and responding to your point.
Yeah, Paul and I have had this go around for quite a few years now. I would point to a couple of things. One is the book written many years ago now, the title, Our Own Metaphor. It was written by Mary Catherine Bateson. She was quite young at the time, but she attended a conference organized by her father, Gregory Bateson, on the topic, the effects of conscious purpose on human adaptation. And it essentially says that to the extent that we proceed in the world in this conscious, purposeful way, we're going to make more of a mess every time we do it. I'll leave that just for a second. In the book, Gordon Pask makes a distinction between when we use the word, whether we're talking about purpose of or purpose for. Purpose of is simply whatever a system does. I mean, you make an observation, there's something that's invariant. You say, oh, you just say, okay, well, that must be the purpose of the system. Okay, that's different than when we talk about purpose for a system, which is something that an observer, an actor, ourselves, say we want it for. that's when we get into trouble. The word purpose has multiple uses. It's had multiple uses over the years. It's now, in my perception, used primarily as a synonym for goal. And the word goal itself is primarily used as a target to be achieved in the future. That's a problem. And I go back to the paper that originated modern cybernetics in 1943, of which it was Rosenthal, Wiener, and Bigelow, and it essentially unpacked the word purpose as it had been being used in science at the time, saying any system that exhibits some circular feedback or deviation, counteracting feedback, is going to appear to have a purpose. It's not mystical. There's nothing unusual about it. It's just that. So as we look at the word purpose ourselves now, going forward, and look at how it's being used in, say, artificial intelligence or other technologies and ways of approaching the world, I think we need to question that. And those who are talk about the application of cybernetics in design, I think that's a really good place to challenge the word purpose.
Thank you, Larry. Mark has his hand up.
So I would like to add to what Larry said. I see this as an addition, not as replacing, but I think it might be interesting to add a distinction, which for me comes from thinking about art, and primarily from Immanuel Kant's way of talking about purpose in art. And he makes this distinction. He actually talks about purposiveness without purpose. And he uses that to distinguish the kind of relationship between concepts and purpose found in law and science and concepts in artistic works. And he says that artistic works have purposiveness without purpose. And then he makes an interesting caveat. He says, at least no definite purpose. And that can be construed to be that you can observe purposiveness and have to infer or discover or seek out what generates that purposiveness. It's not inherent in it. And so that could also encompass the notion of an assigned purpose or a given purpose, which might be part of the second distinction Larry was referring to, or it might relate to what Deborah said about articulation of a purpose. And I think that also would help think about this general notion of purpose and purposiveness in cybernetics.
Thank you, Mark. Jerry's got his hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to add to both what Larry and Mark said, but from a slightly different perspective, going back to what I addressed in my first 2 minutes with regard to the role of human reasoning, that is, as it's expressed in terms of predicate logic, that is, associating the subject with the predicates that it generates. And it's from this perspective that I come to the point of looking very carefully at the nature of languages and how languages are used to generate terminologies and how these different terminologies have different symbol systems depending on the domain of discourse. That is, the distinctions between the languages of mathematics, the languages of physics, the languages of chemistry, the language of genetics, and the languages of social systems. These all are separate and distinct symbolic languages. They all have their own form of reasoning, and that these forms of reasoning that are so separate and distinct from one another are expressible in terms of the predications of the logics. And of course, within the cybernetics community, all of these languages are interrelated, intertangled, interconnected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the 2-minute round that we just finished showed this tremendous degree of intersections between these different languages in terms of their goals and purposes. And so the need for finding ways to bridge the gaps between these languages and their corresponding forms of reasoning is profound. And this is what has motivated my research work for quite a number of years.
Thank you, Jerry. Michael's got his hand up.
Thank you. I think Jude was there before me.
Well, it's coming up on the screen, but
Okay.
I was going from the screen.
No, you're up, Michael. You were next.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, conscious purpose or purpose is always associated with Gregory Bateson's paper on conscious purpose that he wrote in Hawaii that was so critical of this first order cybernetic, I would call it, rational approach to pursuing our goals and very narrow and rational and without taking into account. So this being overly certain that you're doing the right thing. And that's what I would associate with conscious purpose. Yeah, that we have no doubts and that we pursue a particular goal or so. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, good. Okay, where are we? Jude then.
Hi. First, I'd like to say that cybernetics is about opposing ideas and being comfortable with that, which is one of the beauties of living in love and having disagreement, Jocelyn, in relation to my cybernetic experience over the years, particularly in the ASC, which is where I mostly hang out and do cybernetics, which comes more from the social perspective in my experience than the others do. Saying that, I also want to say that rational thinking, reasoning, there's at least two phenomenal domains of being human. One is the rational domain, the domain of language and distinctions. And then there's the domain of experience, which is unexplainable, which as soon as you move into language, you're out of the experience. You're into the explanation domain. So I think that in relation to my understanding and desire of not focusing on purpose so much. And if you, I mean, I changed my mind in the chat. I said, okay, well, what about, purpose and presence and process? Because for me, cybernetics is much about the language of processing and being in the present. And that's something I've learned really, really a lot by caring for honeybees. But then after hearing more and more, I'm thinking, well, what is a word that might be more appropriate for me than purpose? And there's that word desire popped up. So now I have a new nest of longing, and that was a technique I learned from Hurd about always longing for a third, which gets me out of that polar, binary trap that the rational thinking has projected for I don't know how long. So anyway, so thank you. And again, this is a great example of how embracing opposing ideas leads to thinking something new. And one of the reasons I love coming to the American Society for Cybernetic Conversations.
Thank you. Johannes, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I would like to make two annotations or two remarks. First, maybe I have a language problem, a purpose, goal,
No problem.
desire. For me, if I ask people or if I ask myself, what is my purpose being here in this conference today? So maybe I have an answer. But I have also, if I ask again, what other purposes do you have? And I am searching a little bit so I can find many purposes or many goals I have with the same action or in the same situation. So this helps me in working with people, yeah, not to focus on one or not to be content with the first answer, but also to ask which other purposes you have. And then it's clear that we can't reach all of them. And the second notion is I'm very impressed by the idea of, I don't know how to pronounce Polynesian sailing, Polynesia. Do you know what it is? Many islands? Yeah. So when people started and wanted to sail to another island, they started and they didn't see any island, and they sailed in this direction, and suddenly they saw over there an island. So they changed their direction. So you don't have to keep on the goals you have. You can change them as well.
Or you can give it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oops.
No, that's fine. Thank you. If you're good with that. Any other thoughts on this? Sean, right? Is it Sean? Am I getting that right?
Yes, thank you. I find this subject very interesting. As I said, I do some research in sort of the pre-cybernetic and even pre-teleology, which they called cybernetics in the 1945 meeting that preceded the Macy meetings, and then in the second and third Macy meeting they used the term teleology again, but then it went away. There was actually White House pushback on that. They didn't like the baggage the term brought. But early in Norbert Wiener's career, when he was studying under Bertrand Russell and at Cambridge and then under Husserl, he had written about teleology and purpose in science before that while at Harvard, and he was very dismissive of it. And I put the short article he wrote back in somewhere between 1911 and 1913. And then after his time focused on phenomenology, he wrote in approximately 1916, much more open to the idea of purpose, the idea of there being this recursive loop, this circular causality in science and in the world. It didn't maintain a prominence in his work after that, but I've always been struck by what Larry mentioned, the 1943 paper with Rosenbluth and Bigelow. They brought back that term teleology, which even in the early 19-teens had been dismissed from science as being too religious and not having a role. But I think that purpose was something that was imbued not only in his thinking, but others as cybernetics took off. As being something of importance and value, of having a goal, of having something to achieve, of having the feedback from whether you're reaching that goal or not reaching that goal be there. And I think that's one of the things we have been missing, or maybe not been missing, but the goal of much of the technology we've produced over the last the 3 decades or more has been under quick revenue, make money, invest in things that make money quickly, and that has been the be all end all. We don't do large ARPA net type projects or cybernetics projects on scale anymore. There's people who are still trying, but I think that purpose is something that is missing from a lot of our current applied tech, and it's what cybernetics can bring back to the equation.
Thank you. Yeah, Larry.
Yeah, comment on the word desire, which I happen to like. The different ways of specifying desires. The common sort of rational way of doing it is to specify them as goals or objectives. I would suggest that we talk here in cybernetics about desires as constraints and intention rather than purpose as an awareness of desires as a set of constraints in right now, in the present, not in the future.
Thank you.
Can I elaborate? Yeah, if desires as constraints, I like a lot, because then I really think my next step is what's possible. The constraints and possibilities go together for me. And that I came to that from Ernst von Glaserfeld, the founder of radical constructivism, who was called a radical constructivist before I think anybody else was, which is how he became the founder of radical constructivism, according to him anyway. What can I say? According to him, but that his definition of cybernetics being that cybernetics is not about causes, but about constraints, as Bateson made clear to him, Gregory Bateson, that is, and that cybernetics is the art of maintaining equilibrium in a world of constraints and possibilities. So when I think like that, this idea of generating desires in many domains, the idea of possibilities pops up. But those possibilities change moment to moment to moment, because I'm uncertain.
Mm. Excellent. Well, let's continue then. Mixel.
Yes, thank you. It's actually I got some questions to Sean how we approach the purposeless technology. I'm way more into the field than into the literature on cybernetics, and I've been focusing the past 5 years on what is happening in Eindhoven. It's not just the ASML company that has a very purposeful, driven direction to get every smaller on the creating the chip scale. But there's a whole culture at the moment in the region talking about creating a brain port and working on what they like to call the fourth generation university, where they see this third generation university, these technical universities, and how they've been an engine for the industrial revolution, and how now universities are challenged by society to actually go way more purposeful. So it's about shifting from nice academic ideas to technology push. They are now moving the other way around and doing a technology pull, like low literacy, and then figuring out how can the high-tech society respond to the low literacy in the Netherlands. So I noticed there is this tendency there, and there's now a network of, I think, 300 universities subscribed to the mission of the fourth generation university. So I wonder how this thing that is happening in mostly Benelux, but it's broader in Europe, and how that relates on to what you are seeing. I don't know where you're located or what's happening in the field there.
No, that's fair, and I'd love to know more about that. I was speaking quickly, so I was speaking in blanket terms of mass technologies that are being sold and adopted at scale, and OpenAI being pushed on my university. It's the only one we're allowed to use in the U.S. At my university, because of the licensing that they have, because of laws, FERPA, I can't use students' information in any other system than their closed system. And so we are being fed a very narrow band of purpose with our technology. And while we can interpret purpose within the use of it, the broader purpose is soak up information, have that for, what Norbert Wiener warned about in 1950, which surveillance and manipulation based on governments and corporations taking in information is going to be the main purpose of this technology. So I'm speaking about the mass technologies that we are dealing with, but there are wonderful things happening, in many places, and they're not, just tiny labs. They're at university levels, but they aren't worldwide levels yet. They are pushed out by these mass scaled technologies that do not have more benign human-centered purpose in front and center.
Yeah,
interesting. I got to quickly respond to that if I'm allowed, but then I'm finished.
Yeah, quickly. I'd like
very
to
quickly, because I find it very fascinating how different from a cultural roots things are happening. I know at this moment in Brussels, there's a lot about digital sovereignty happening.
Mm-hmm.
They are rallying up and they are getting mobilized. So there are stuff happening. But I also been on a trading mission to China, to Beijing. And I've noticed some very fundamental thing related to the cultural roots and how that actually creates purpose on a global scale. So I'm really happy to talk about that later if you want. I'll send you my Substack. That's where I keep my logbook.
Yeah, please. I think, what happens in these situations, particularly when we have a trying to balance, willingness to contribute, is that there are some constraints here, right? We started with constraints, and it gives you some emergent possibilities. And the question of sovereignty and AI, and then the restriction like you have at your university, I think Paul's going to get into a little bit with his rebraiding of cybernetics and the world of AI on March the 25th. So that's a plug for Paul, little advertisement break here, and sign up for that. But I do think this topic is one particularly around AI and who's got access and how and where it goes and how it's stored and what's used and what isn't used. And data sovereignty and privacy, are also matters of incredible urgency and immediacy right now that we should probably have another session on. So where are we? Jerry.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to continue with the points of view that Paul and that Larry and Paul brought up with respect to the sense of desire and how it relates to
Actually, I brought up desire.
Okay, sorry, Jude. The sense of how it relates to natural systems. And here one, for example, can take the desire for health or desire for disease or the absence of good health or whatever, depending on circumstances. And this general notion of attractors and repellers is foundational to the dynamics of human activities. And how we relate these to attractors and repellers then becomes, if you would, a mathematical issue. And in this context, the entire language of the natural sciences, and particularly stressed by the physicists, is in terms of attraction repellers of how the systems will unfold in time. And it is this point I'd like to make what I think is a crucial point of view with respect to the nature of nature and the nature of mathematics. In the physical languages, the nature of mathematics is grounded in the number system such that all the terms are defined in terms of the language of physics, and that is the physical constants, which they have now about 42, which are all artificial constants. In the biological sciences, the chemical sciences, the language is not artificial. It's developed from the terms of the system itself. So the observations of the system determine the language in which you will describe the system, not artificial mathematics or physical languages. And then so at this point, one comes to the crucial notions of how does one relate a set of attractors and a set of repellers within the language that you are using. And this is something that the philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce developed a logic for and a notation for. And this notation is a form of a copulative and predicative logic. And so the very nature of the structure of the languages we use to describe nature becomes involved in expressing the desires, whether they be positive or negative attractors or repellers.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jerry. That's well put. And I've spent 40 years in the United States, but I grew up in London. And I go back to England a lot. And we both speak English, but we Americans and English speak English very differently. Mark.
So I'd like to make a slight shift and return to some things that came up in what Paul said and also Jude. It has to do a bit with purpose, but also Jude's observation that there's a preponderance of men. And if you look at racial situation, that also is skewed. And this, I think, connects to the notion that Paul introduced of a wicked challenge. And it occurred to me that that's not really a surprise, and it's not the first time, and it seems like a situation we've all known for decades. So my question is, and I'll tell you what my answer is just to start things off, but I wonder, can cybernetics budge a wicked challenge? And my answer would be, I think so, but it doesn't do it automatically. And there's a writer, Willem Flusser, who's written about the apparatus and the role of disruptive practices in disturbing what I would call also wicked challenges. And he thinks that that can happen in art, but it can also happen in design, technology. And he thinks that the role of disruptive practices in our contemporary situation is crucial for responding in any way that's not just perpetuating the wicked challenges. So I'm curious what others think about that. And also, I would like to see us try to move on these things instead of just acknowledging, oh, there's so few women in the room. How many decades are we going to keep saying that?
Mark, that I feel passionately about this. I'm very conscious as much as I can be about that topic. You know, we've started the Ministry of Fun within the American Society for Cybernetics. It hasn't been as active as I would like. I'm going to attempt to pay more attention to that, and I'm attempting to be a little bit more disruptive. I mean, this is a little bit of a different pattern in a speaker series. We've redefined speaker today, at least in a way, slightly disruptive to the speaker pattern that we have. And I think we need to be radically disruptive, actually. And I invite you all to join the Ministry of Fun. And then I'm creating the other Ministry of Fun to transcend boundaries, because the Ministry of Fun is started in the American Society. No, you don't want that?
No, I mean,
Okay.
To take the issue that Mark raises,
yes,
and
to make it fun,
to talk about a Ministry of Fun angers me.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't like it at all.
Oh, please tell me why it angers.
I find it dismissive.
Oh, okay. Please.
I find it very dismissive in the sense of, oh, we want people of color and we want women. Let's have a Ministry of Fun.
Well,
not to argue against your Ministry of Fun, but to correlate it with this issue that we're talking about. And my statements have been as a disruptive, which I'm often, which I've come to be comfortable with in cybernetics, and I often attempt to do that in love, Jocelyn.
Yes.
That is the legitimization of the other. And if I haven't legitimized everybody in this room at some point today, or if I have illegitimized someone, I would love to know that. But I try very hard not to.
No, you've done great. I mean, I love you for it, Judy. That's good.
Thank you. You're one of not everybody, and people have come to understand me as that's my role often in the ASC, and even not. I mean, when I was a professor, it was like people would come up to me because I was considered, the radical, and they would say, "Why didn't you say something?" I'm like, "Why didn't you say something?"
Well, look, as a white,
I always have to be the one that don't interrupt me. Why
I'm
do I
disrupting
always
you,
have
Jude.
to
I'm
be?
disrupting you.
Well, that is a legitimate disruption, not disruption in love.
All right.
Anyway.
All right.
Thank you, Mark, for pointing it out in the sense of, once again, this is a continuous, and I think that it needs to be a focus of the ASC, in the sense of how do we, in addition to a Ministry of Fun, attract people of color,
indeed,
and different ethnicities. I choose not to use the word race because there's only one human race, and my desire is to be nonviolent and generate a social transformation by changing the language. Damn you, Herbert Brune, and thank you, Herbert Brune.
I would add that I'm curious if cybernetics can help us do that, and cybernetic thinking.
I feel that it has helped me do that.
I agree. Me too.
Well, thank you both. Thank you both, and I'm very conscious. I'm an older white male, and I sometimes get it wrong, or not appropriate. So please help me.
Well, I'm an older white woman, and sometimes I get it wrong too, Peter.
Okay. Well, I'm very concerned about this topic, and it's another area that we need to pay more attention to energetically. And I see two hands have come up, and we've got a little while remaining. We've got I'm going to call it at past. So Jamie, and then Johannes, if you've got some brief comments, please.
Yeah, really quick. I put something into the chat, which I'll read to you, that hope somebody or a few of you can answer. Outside of education memorializing cybernetics, from 1945 until now, in what situations or applications has cybernetics been successful as a process management tool benefiting human goals or interests specifically? And that's my question.
Well, that's your question. I think we can take that for another session at some times, Jamie, as we're coming to the conclusion, but thanks for the prompt or the provocation. Johannes.
Provocateur is what I am.
Yeah, to the question of Mark, whether cybernetics can change anything, I would say no, cybernetic can't change anything. It's us who can change something. And cybernetics is a tool maybe, but it's not a subject. It's not an active person or something. It's a theoretical construct, nothing more. In our heads,
I agree. That's why I said, can cybernetic thinking help us? So the emphasis there is on the human agency. I know cybernetics can't do anything without us. But thank you for clarifying that.
It's in the relational space of being with the other.
Which we've been today, I hope.
Some of the time.
A little bit. Thank you. I'm feeling that we're drawing to a close, at least I feel I am. And it's been a wonderful treat to have the honor, really, of doing this. And thank you, Howard, again for your work on the speaker series and for encouraging me to do this today. And I think it just shows how rich this community is and the work that we've got to do. And Jerry's either waving, he wants to say something, or he's waving goodbye.
Well, I just would ask if it's possible to capture the chat in for the audience, because I haven't been succeeded in downloading the chat, and it has several references in I'd like to follow.
I agree. I think, I don't know what the settings are on this recording, but
actually, if you in the right-hand corner of the meeting chat click, it says save chat, and it should save it to your computer.
Upper or lower right-hand corner?
Upper right-hand corner of the meeting chat window.
Okay. Got it.
And you click on the arrow, and it should say save chat.
Thank you, Peter. This was great.
All right.
Good idea.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Peter.
Wonderful.
Thanks,
okay.
Peter.
Well, thank you all. Love you all. Thank you. See you next time.